King Arthur's Knights, Chapter 7, Part 4. Just before the dawn, he awoke to the sound of a great rushing wind all about him. Yet marvel it was to see that the trees in that hoar wood did not wave their branches, but all were still. Then he was aware of a sweet savor which surrounded him, and anon a gentle voice spoke out of the darkness. "Fair white knight," said the voice, "it is ordained of thee that thou goest to the lands of the King Pellam in the north, where an evil power seeks to turn men from the new law which Christ brought, and to make them cleave to the old law with its cruelty and evil tortures. And there at the castle of the circlet thou shalt fight a battle for the Saviour of the world. And whether thou shalt win through all, none know as yet. But in thy purity, thy humility is thy strength. Fare thee well." Much moved at these words, Percival knelt and prayed. Then, as the dawn filtered through the trees, he mounted his horse and began his long journey to the north. On the seventh day he crossed a plain and saw far in the north where the smoke as fires rose into the clouds, and here and there he saw the fierce red gleam of flames. As he passed through a ford, and then he entered a land all black and desolate, with the bodies of the dead beside the way, unburied, and the houses all broken or burned. In other places, the grass and weeds grew over the hearths of desolated homes, and wild beasts made their lairs where homey folk seemed lately to have lived their simple, happy lives. No man or child could be seen anywhere to ask what all this might mean. But one day, as he walked his horse beside a brook over the long grass, he came upon a poor half-starved peasant who had not strength to run. And the man knelt before him and bared his breast and said, "Strike, Sir Knight, and end my misery." But Percival raised him in his arms and kissed him, and gave him bread and wine from his scrip. And when the poor man was revived, Percival asked him what his words meant. "Ah, Sir White Knight," said the man, whose tears fell as he spoke, "surely thou art an angel of heaven, not of the pit, such as have ravened and slaughtered through this fair land since good King Pellam was struck by the dolorous stroke that Balin made. For of that stroke came all our misery. The sacred relics of the crucifixion fled our land, our king sickened by a malady that naught could heal, our crops rotted, and our cattle died. Yet did some among us strive to live and do as brave men should in all adversity. But into the land came an evil and a pagan knight, the knight of the dragon, and he willed that all should scorn and despise the good Christ, and should turn to the old gods of the standing stones and the oak groves. And those that would not he slew, and their folk he trampled underfoot, and their herds and fields he destroyed and desolated. And I, fair lord, have lost my dear wife and my wee bairns, and I wonder why I fled and kept my life, remembering all I lost." "Take heart," said Percival, "and remember that it is God, his mercy, that chastiseth, and that while thou hast life, thou hast hope. It is a man's duty, a man's nobility, to bear sorrows bravely and still to work, to do all and to achieve. I think God will not long let this evil knight oppress and slay. In his good time he will cut him down." "Fair sir," said the peasant, "I thank thee for thy cheer, and I will take heart and trust in God's good time." And Percival rode forward through the blackened land, and found the forest burning and the fields wasted. Anon he came to the edge of a plain, and saw a great castle in the distance. And there came to him a damsel, weeping, and when he craved of her to tell him why she mourned, she stayed and looked at him as if astounded. Then she cried with a great cry of joy, "Oh, tell me, fair sir, who art thou? Thou hast the white armor which it was foretold the spotless knight should wear, and on thy shield is the heart as of him that bled to save the world. I know not of what you say, replied Percival, but my name is Percival, son of Evroc, and I seek the wicked knight that doeth all this evil. Then thou art the white knight, said the damsel, and now I pray that God aid thee, for my lady and all this poor land have need of thee. Come thou to my mistress, the lady of the chaplet. Therewith she led him to the castle, and the lady thereof came out to him. She was of a sad countenance, but of a great beauty, though poorly clothed. Fair sir, she said, my maiden hath told me who thou art, and I sorrow that one so noble as thou seemest shall essay to overcome the fiend knight of the dragon. Yet if thou shouldst prevail, all men in this tortured land will bless thee, and I not the least. For daily doth the evil knight slay my poor knights, and cometh and casteth their blackened and burned bodies before my hall. And many of my poor folk hath he slain or enslaved, and others hath he caused to follow his evil worship. And many of my rich and fair lands hath he wrested from me. Therefore, fair lady, said Percival, I will seek him without delay, for to essay the force of my body upon him by the grace of God. And shouldst thou conquer, said the lady, with the fiend's death, the hallowed relics which King Pellam guarded shall return to bless this land. Now, therefore, go ye toward the burnt land beyond the brook, for that is where is the lair of the fiend that doth oppress us. Percival went forward across the plain to a brook, and having forded the water, he came to a wide hollow where the ground was all baked and burned, and the trees were charred and black. Here and there lay pieces of armor, red and rusted, as if they had been in a fierce fire. And in one place was the body of a knight freshly slain, and he was charred and black. Then, as Percival looked about him, he saw the dark hole of a cave in a bank beside the hollow, and suddenly therefrom issued a burst of horrible fire and smoke, and with a cry as of a fiend, a black knight suddenly appeared before him on a great horse, whose eyes flashed as with fire, and whose nostrils jetted hot vapors. Ha, thou Christian, cried the knight in a horrible voice, what dost thou here? Wouldst thou have thy pretty white armor charred and blackened, and thyself killed by my dragon's power? Then Percival saw how the boss of the Black Knight's shield was the head of a dragon, its forked tongue writhing, its teeth gnashing, and its eyes so red and fiendish that no mortal, unless by God's aid, could look on it and live. From its mouth came a blinding flash, as of lightning, and beat at Percival. But he held up his shield of the throbbing heart, and with angry shrieks the Black Knight perceived that the lightning could not touch the shield. Then from his side the evil knight tore his sword, and it flamed red, as if it were heated in a fierce furnace. And thrusting forward, he came and beat at Percival. But the white knight warded off the blows with his shield, which the flaming sword had no power to harm. Then did the Black Knight marvel greatly, for never had a knight, however skilled, withstood him, for either the lightning stroke of the dragon's shield had burnt him, or the stroke of his flaming sword had slain him swiftly. And by this he knew that this knight was Percival. Thou knowest not who it is thou fightest, said the Black Knight with a scornful laugh. Ha ha! Thou must put forth more than the skill thou didst learn of the witches of Glaive, if thou wouldst overcome me. For know ye that I am a fosterling of Domna, the witch, and she taught me more than ever she taught you. Now prepare ye to die. Then Percival knew that this indeed was the fight which Domna had foretold, and that if he failed in this, ruin and sorrow would be the lot of many. And Percival began to thrust and strike full valorously and skillfully, but naught seemed to avail him. Thus for a long time they went about thrusting and striking. Always the strength of the Black Knight seemed as unwearied as that of a demon, while Percival felt his arm weaken, as much from the great strokes he gave as from the burning fires that darted at him from the dragon's shield. Then Percival cried in prayer for aid, and asked that if Christ would have this land saved for his glory, strength should be given him to slay this fiendish oppressor. Forthwith, strength seemed to nerve his arm mightily, and lifting his sword, he struck at the shield of the knight, and so vehement was the blow that he cut down the shield even to the head of the dragon. Feeling the wound, the dragon gave forth a great flame, and Percival wondered to see that now his own sword burned as if on fire. Then, while the Black Knight marveled at this stroke, Percival struck at him more fiercely and beat in the other's helm, so that the fiend knight bent and swayed in his saddle. But recovering, he became so wroth that with his fiery sword he heaved a mighty blow at Percival and cut through his hauberk, even to the shoulder, which was burned to the bone. Ere the other could withdraw himself, Percival thrust his sword to the hilt into the loathsome throat of the dragon, whereupon the dragon gave so terrible a cry that the earth seemed to shake with the horror of it. And in its wrath and pain, the dragon's head turned upon the Black Knight, its master, and vomited forth fire so fiercely that it scorched and burned him utterly, so that he fell from his horse dead. Percival, dizzy and weak from the battle, alighted from his horse and went towards the knight, that he might slay the dragon. But suddenly he swooned and fell, and his consciousness went from him. When Percival came to his senses again, he found himself upon a pallet, and the rough walls of a room were about him, while above him was the window, as it seemed, of an abbey or convent. And he was so weak he could not lift his hand. Someone came to him, and he recognized Todd the troll. "Ah, good Todd," he said faintly, "where am I?" "Now God be praised," said Todd, and smiled joyfully, "for the nuns feared ye might not win through the poison of your wound which the dragon knight did give you. 'Twas I who had followed you, Lord, since that you did leave the hold of the witches, and when you swooned, I brought you here to the convent of the white nuns. And now that I know ye live, I go to your lady mother to tell her the good news, for she is weary to know tidings of you." "Go, good Todd," said Percival, "and say I will come for her blessing when I may mount my horse again." When Todd had left him, there came a nun to him, and he knew her for Angharad, who had been so proud and scornful when he left her at the castle of Weeds. And he asked her how she fared, and why she was a nun. "To repent of my evil mind," she said, "for when you left us, I did not in my heart thank ye that you had saved my mother and me from death and worse. And the witches came to me and tempted me with riches and power, even as they were tempting you while you were with them. I heard how you withstood them, and I scorned you and hated you, and said you would yield some day. And then you left the witches, having learned all their strong powers, yet having withstood them, and I marveled much. I heard men say that you were one of 3 stainless knights of the world that should achieve the Holy Grail, because of your great humility and purity, and the great honor and glory would be yours, because you put not your trust in your own strength. Then I repented and would not listen to the evil women. But they followed me, whispering and tempting, and then for terror I sought a holy hermit, and he brought me here. And now am I at peace, and my proud heart is humble." "By my faith, sister," said Percival, "I am rejoiced to hear thee. For I thought when I saw thee that thou hadst a proud and hard heart. But as thou wert a beauteous and lovely maiden, I thought much of thee. And had it not been foreordained otherwise, I would have loved thee above all women and wedded thee." The sister's pale face flushed. "Nay, but thou hadst a greater glory in store for thee," she said, "for thou shalt find the Holy Grail and restore it to this kingdom. and with it weak men shall forsake their learnings to the old law of hate and cleave only to Christ and his new law of love. It is as God may will it, said Percival. In a little while he strengthened and rose from his pallet, and fared forth towards the north, where his widowed mother sat in her lonely hall, waiting for him, whose fame was sweet in every man's mouth. And as he passed through the land, he saw how it had already begun to smile again. Men went to their work unafraid, and the corn was brightening on the hills. The cattle lowed, women sang at their work, and children played, and all blessed him as he rode. Thus was ended at last the sorrow in the land of King Pellam, which was brought in by the dolorous stroke which Sir Balin had given a generation before. And we'll go on with Chapter 8 in the next video. Oh, I'm looking forward to reading about Sir Owen. I hope you are too. Please like, subscribe, leave a comment below. I love you guys. As Tigger says, ta-ta for now.